just so that you could experience what it's like to do this online learning, to understand what it's like not to have the lecturer in the room, rather to be looking at a video or an articulate or a Camtasia. We decided to present this topic using a video instead. So we're going to talk about mobile learning, mLearning, and see where we go from there. I suppose if we're going to talk about anything in education, really, we'd have to refer back to the governor, John Dewey. John Dewey, born in 1859 and died in 1952, had an extraordinarily significant influence on education in particular, but also social reform. Dewey said in his book, Democracy in Education, that society not only continues to exist by transmission, but by communication. It may fairly be said to exist in transmission, in communication, very much in line with what McLuhan would have said about the media and the message, and Chomsky and people like that. So communication, how information is communicated, is almost as important as the content of that information. And particularly with new technologies and new devices, we see that more and more. The manner in which the information is packaged influences how consumers consume it. So if we think about our students, would they prefer to have some footy-duty lecturer like me talking about a topic, or would they prefer to look at a video of the exact same information? When we think about mobile learning, this is how I see it. I see mobile learning as a subset of e-learning, and e-learning as a subset of distance learning. So distance learning and distance education has been going on for a significant number of years. When we use technology, then we're into e-learning, but it's a special form of distance learning. When we use mobile technology, then we're looking at mobile learning. So this model helps conceptualize for me how I think about mobile learning. So mobile learning is any form of electronically delivered learning material with an emphasis though on internet or web-based technologies. And the goal really is to integrate mobile technologies in a way that provides just-in-time and just-in-place learning. So it's not like e-learning in the sense that you could do long courses. The focus on mobile learning is very short, little specific courses. In the past decade, we've seen a surge in terms of the capability of mobile devices. So we have this opportunity here. Whether we're going to use this opportunity correctly is an interesting question, though. People don't want to use a mobile device to read complicated, highly detailed schemas or lecture notes or things like that. The screen size is not suitable for it, the activity isn't suitable for it. What they want to do, though, and what is very helpful, is if they can get the right information at the right time, in the right place, from anywhere. So it's not about technology at all, it's about your ability as an instructional designer, your ability as a content developer, to develop content and instruction that is suitable for the media, for the context in which it is going to be delivered. And I suppose this goes in parallel with the idea of learning. There's been a shift in education in general, as we know. In the past, the focus has been on the student's ability to learn information, whereas now with the widespread availability of information on the World Wide Web, we have to focus on being able to find a specific piece of information when we need it. And we'd almost call that a knowledge level ability on behalf of our students. So it is the context that is key, it is the semantics, it is the knowledge that we understand, having that information where, when and how. It is a fact as well that the nature of the student has changed a great deal in the last 20-25 years. In the past, students had less commitments, were very much of the same kind, whereas now we have a very diverse range of students in third level, so we have to consider the types of students we have and the opportunities for learning they may have that hitherto would have been impossible. So until recently, students on the bus mightn't necessarily be seen as a venue for learning, but now with every student or many students having podcasting devices, it's possible to do recordings and they can learn stuff off or listen to stuff on the bus. So the ability to study while travelling really presents exciting opportunities, for sure. Here's a model of how we might look at mobile learning, where we think about the knowledge base, that is the information we want to teach them, and the knowledge, the best practices, the examples, the views of experts, the research. When we're thinking about mobile learning though, we need to model the learner as well. What are their attitudes? What concepts do they know? What facts do they know already? What processes do they know? What procedures do they know already? And then what attitudes do we need to teach them? What concepts do we need to teach them? What facts do we need to teach them? What processes and what procedures? And is there a transformation process required to change from their existing attitudes, concepts, facts, processes and procedures to our desired sets of attitudes, concepts, facts, processes and procedures? And then what does the mobile element give you, the mobile layer, in terms of being able to access things on the fly, in terms of being able to focus on specific tasks, in terms of supporting short windows of time? And also we might think about the technological limitations of how much information we can store on these devices. So there's a range of mobile learning devices around. Here's a few possibilities. We might classify them as digital media players like iPods or MP3 players. We might think about smartphones like Blackberries and iPhones. We might think of personal digital assistants or PDAs, Palm Pilots and Pocket PCs, and notebook computers and tablet PCs. When we're into notebooks and tablet PCs, we're halfway between the laptop or PC and the mobile devices we traditionally think about. So they're an interesting transition piece. They have some of the features of a mobile device and some of the features of a laptop or PC. The fact that many tablets, we'll say, don't have a keyboard means we can't be necessarily asking students to type in a lot of information or things like that. So sometimes the tablet devices are almost treated like passive video viewers. In terms of the kinds of technology to transmit mobile information, there are a range of technologies that are available. GSM is the global system for mobile communications, which was European standard, and now it's used in America, Asia, Australia, Africa and Europe as well. That's the technological standard we use for voicemail, high-speed data, fax and text messages. WAP, WAP is the wireless application protocol, and that's a free protocol in XML that's used by a lot of mobile providers as well. GPRS is the General Packet Radio Service, and it's a protocol for high-speed internet, which is very much growing in popularity. Bluetooth is a shortwave wireless radio technology, and I'm sure some of you have even used Bluetooth. You set up Bluetooth on your phone, you set up Bluetooth on your laptop, you've handshaked or connected to each other, then you've transferred files or things like that, which is quite possible to do using Bluetooth. IEEE 802.11, which is a protocol for wireless LANs or local area networks, and then IrDA, which is the Infrared Data Association, which is a transmission protocol for devices only a couple of meters away. So you see some iPhones or smartphones that you can plug in a little device on top, a little infrared transmitter, and then you can control your television or your music player from that. So the idea would be, instead of having a range of different remote control devices, that your smartphone would be used for all of those devices. It's an interesting idea. So what are the considerations we need to think about when we're delivering mobile learning material that makes it distinctive from general e-learning? Well, if we're thinking about phones in particular, the issues would be the smaller screen size. And as I alluded to previously, when we have smaller screen sizes, what that means is we can't have detailed schematics. We mightn't even necessarily be able to have detailed mind maps. We can't have lots of text even, because it's too confusing and very slow if you want to zoom in on each piece of text and run through it. We're aware that students are using these devices on the fly, on the go, so we need to be aware of their time-sensitive pressures. These devices have either small keyboards or no keyboards at all, so we cannot expect a high level of interactivity in terms of text input from the learners. They have limited memory size, so we can't store lots and lots of complex applications or programs. They may have limited battery life, which is always a consideration with mobile devices, and there might be compatibility issues, let's say, between Android and iPhones or things like that. So what do these criteria, these parameters require us to do? What they require us to do is ensure that our teaching modules are very short, to ensure the navigation is as clear and easy to use as possible, to attempt at least to ensure there's consistency within both the format and the content of the mLearning materials we design. We need to adhere to standards, technical standards mentioned before, and learning object standards if possible. And really, if we can focus on the idea of little chunks of information that can be reusable in different contexts when we design mLearning, that's a very effective approach. Here's one nice project that looked at the use of mLearning, where they used it essentially like clickers and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Students would be asked, where does bile come from in the body? Is it from the liver, the kidneys, the knee, or the elbow? And then the students get to vote A, B, C, or D, and then instantly on the screen you see bar charts showing who voted for A, who voted for B, who voted for C, who voted for D. And this kind of peer learning is very good for students. If I vote for B and everybody else in the class has voted for D, then I know, I got that wrong. I should really study more on this subject. So in terms of supporting peer learning or collecting a range of opinions or anything like that, mobile devices can be very strong for that, providing everybody in the class has a mobile device, of course. If we think about the ADDIE model, which we mentioned previously, the analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation, one point we'd have to make is that the analysis section has to be so much more detailed. We have to think a lot more about the conditions under which this mLearning material will be used and the range of conditions that will be used. On a noisy bus, on a short bus journey, my battery is just running out, the sound isn't good in here. All those issues we need to take into account when we're designing our content and have a much more significant awareness of it. We've mentioned in class already that for e-learning in general, we don't know when it's going to be looked at, we don't know by whom it's going to be looked at. But specifically, if we were using an ADDIE model, we'd just spend a lot more time on the analysis phase. Interestingly enough, when we think about it from a work point of view, researcher Gloria Gery looked at performance support, that is to say, what information do I need in a work situation, just-in-time information, and how can mobile technology support it? So that term, performance support, in essence means, how can mobile devices support my learning? David Johansen looked at constructivism in the context of mobile learning and feels that mobile learning is almost the perfect platform to provide a constructivistic approach. Not necessarily a social constructivistic approach, but a constructivistic approach, a cognitive constructivistic approach, where the learner is building up their own understanding of things. So, because the chunks are small, we're not necessarily looking at a series of learning outcomes and the students will have achieved this by the end of the module. Rather, we're thinking about what chunks or nuggets of information can we give the learner to scaffold their learning in many ways. And as I said, because that researcher concludes that constructivism is a good match with the idea of mobile learning in general, because the learner is doing it individually, they're taking bits of information and constructing their own understanding around something, and the object really is to learn what those nuggets of information or skills are. A parallel notion and a very important development, I think, is the trend for podcasting, and podcasting can be both video or audio podcasting. Podcasting allows us to spread information quickly. It allows us to give students flexibility in terms of when and where they look at things. There's a lot of free online material now. I guess everybody's looked at some TED Talks. There's the Khan Academy, MIT Online. Lots of colleges are putting lecture notes or quality lectures or seminars online. So there's a real opportunity, I think, for a lecturer to think less about using the teaching and rather use existing material. Find the best of existing material and deliver that to the students as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's got to be a core concept in learning. What's out there already and what can we reuse? So in terms of references, if you want to look up more about this, I have references that complement what I've talked about here, but really I think for learning a lot of it is suck it and see, just have a go at it and see what you think about it.